I will talk about the fear-shame mindset. We become what helps us survive best in our environment. It's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the adaptable. In my earlier videos, I mentioned how our fascia remodels and adapts to meet the demands of our environment. Our posture reflects how we feel inside. At least that was true for me. Up until my mother died, I had excellent posture. I felt good about myself and my abilities. Effortlessly, I stood tall and straight. 2 years post my mother's death, I developed scoliosis. My spine became a crooked mess. The doctors gave it a fancy name, idiopathic scoliosis. I thought idiopathic scoliosis was the name of some disease, but on looking in the dictionary, it meant, in medical terminology, cause unknown. The sad fact is that in an estimated 80 to 90% of cases, scoliosis is termed as idiopathic. Modern medicine is only interested in the what's wrong with that person model rather than asking what happened to that person that caused the spine to twist like this. This is a common practice with all medical examinations. They only discuss the physical aspect while the emotional aspect of the patient is completely ignored. To be honest, no doctor has the time to go into your developmental history to suss out the root causes. It's up to you to dig deep and find the underlying reason for the why of your condition. That's the only way to heal and get better. Remove the thorn within, and your pain and infection vanishes. No one asked how I was feeling emotionally. I so wanted to tell someone I was feeling terrible, and it wasn't only because of scoliosis. It was due to the depressing home life and the repugnant people I had to deal with. From being accepted and unconditionally loved, I was now unwanted and a nuisance. My feeling that I was good enough was overwritten by the belief that I was flawed. The abuse, bullying, invalidation, and parentification decimated my self esteem. Being treated like I didn't matter made me feel there's something wrong with me. When your own family doesn't see you as worthy and a part of them, it induces a deep sense of shame. Furthermore, being sexually abused and then blamed for being the seductress to the pedophiles in my family sent my shame into a cesspool of self-loathing and self-denigration. Shame was a dirty rag I carried deep within my soul. Shame is a subconscious emotion. It's a visceral feeling that permeates and corrodes your insides. I'm a piece of trash. When people know who I am, they will be repulsed. After all, my family does. Our beliefs become the basis of our mindset. The victim mindset, the loser mindset, the codependent mindset, the shameful mindset, the guilt trip mindset, the I have to be perfect mindset, or the I am stupid mindset. From feeling confident and walking tall, my posture devolved to that of a frightened mouse. Before and after my mother's death were two different realities. Soon after her death, my father amped up his level of balance, and then a cousin began molesting me. My maternal grandmother, who was the best grandma before my mother died, changed into a mean crone. My maternal side of the family turned out to be real turncoats. It was a shock to realize that people you thought had your back didn't care and didn't have your best interest at heart. They were only interested in you for your utility, the silent treatment, the hiding of food, the making fun of, the derision, the put downs, the free utilization of my services, dishwasher, babysitter, therapist, all in the guise of giving a motherless child a break. Nothing was overt, but the insidiousness of covert abuse and passive aggressive behavior can be devastating. It messes with your head. Your mind is in a state of unbearable cognitive dissonance. How does a child make sense of this crazy making behavior? I thought I'd go mad, living in denial, shutting off, and pretending everything was fine is how I survived. Moreover, having the mindset of having to be a good Christian made me unconsciously default to self sacrifice, meekness, and tolerance for bad behavior. I was raised with the belief that to go to heaven, sacrificing myself for others, like Jesus, would get me there. But living in the hope of a glorious afterlife at the cost my physical and emotional well being. Self erasure is no recipe for nirvana. It only turned me into a bitter, resentful, seething teen who had to stuff all these distressing emotions deep inside me. Over the years, I accumulated a sludge of unprocessed emotion. You don't realize until years of abuse and damage what utter baloney this being a good Christian mindset is. It led to the destruction of my mental and physical health. The problem with a sick, dysfunctional family is nearly everyone is so damaged. Each is looking for a scapegoat to offload their issues or service their needs. There is no reciprocal, mutually beneficial, caring support and respectful connection. Besides, my father and maternal grandmother, three other people caused me deep soul destroying damage. No, they did not hit me, but their words and actions, completely devoid of empathy, slowly eroded my essence and broke my spirit. I don't know which fool wrote the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Hurtful words are like sharp hooks that lodge in the recesses of your brain. They echo in your head and play every waking moment long after the event. They become your critical inner voice that controls how you see yourself, how you think and behave. When these are the people you look up to, depend upon, and expect to fulfill nurturing roles. One was a relative by marriage who, not even a month after my mother died, came to my house and told my father she was taking me to her place for the weekend. I was overjoyed. But now she had her own selfish agenda, free maid servant to wash and clean and to be her therapist. I still hear her frenzied hatred for her husband. If anyone was in my place, she would have left him long back. Her unloading of her woes about her husband, my mother's brother, affected my relationship with him. Only years later, I realized the extent of her guile and cunning. She didn't see me as a person, a child who had lost a parent, but a convenient fool to exploit. The other two covert abusers were my mother's siblings, male and female, who happened to be the more successful ones in my mother's family of eight kids. They are doing better than the rest of the family, turned them into narcissists, I believe. The uncle in the merchant navy before my mother died showed that he was fond of me. Once, when he visited my dying mother, he carried me over his head. It felt weird, but since my mother smiled, I knew it was a good sign. Then, the first time I met him after my mother died, he had just returned from abroad. I eagerly rushed to meet him at my maternal grandmother's place, which was close to my house. The guy didn't even acknowledge my presence. He didn't want me around because he was giving his year-old son mango juice. Even if he didn't want to give me the juice, at least he could have acknowledged my presence, my loss. Nothing. He just kept attending to his son and acted like I wasn't there. I was frozen numb in shock. But instead of walking away, I continued hoping for a crumb of compassion. Nothing. Finally, I accepted defeat and left. That was his pattern of behavior. He'd drop his kids at his mother's place with a box full of goodies that were only for them, while I washed their backsides, fed them, comforted them, and played with them. From ages 11 to 15, I had the role of unpaid babysitter. As if this wasn't enough, he made fun of my clothes and even my body. He said nasty things like, your hands are like a man. It was devastating for a teenage girl to hear. My mother's narcissistic sister, who I thought would be my surrogate mother, became jealous of my blossoming womanhood. She'd always make some underhand remarks whenever I tried out something new. She'd pretend to care by giving her old clothes, which looked absurd for a teen. And I was supposed to be grateful for these pseudo acts of benevolence. Then, on top of it all, her husband began hitting on me. Talk about triangulation. This was the worst kind. Overnight, I had to deal with this drastic change in dynamics. From being my favorite uncle, who I thought was on my side, to warding off a creep who was out to violate me. Finally, his wife, my aunt, couldn't couldn't hold her rage any longer. She accused me, a 12-year-old, of trying to seduce this creep. The shock was so intense that I fell on the floor and collapsed. When I came to, I heard my grandmother cautioning her, "Don't say anything, or a father will not spare me." My father hated my maternal grandmother. I was still in a daze when this creepy uncle woke up from his afternoon siesta and, seeing me spaced out, asked concernedly, what was the matter? The level of pretense in sick families is beyond comprehension. The adults, my grandmother thought it was okay to blame a child, but didn't think it was necessary to rebuke the adult perpetrator. He was never called into accountability. 1 week later, my grandmother forced me to go for a ride with this creep. My mind went into self protective mode. I blanked out. I didn't remember any of this until my breakdown in my late 20s. I only knew that I must do my best to hide my body. It was dangerous and shameful to have a woman's body. Scoliosis became my armor. It made me unattractive and helped keep out predators. However, fear and shame became entrenched in my sight, and I didn't consciously understand why. Fear and shame are closely interconnected. Fear of survival is a primal emotion. We will do anything to stay alive. The first survival lesson we all learn in childhood is, don't upset our caregivers and keep them happy. Their feelings matter, not ours. And if we don't toe the line, we are shamed into compliance. Most of us are brought up in an environment of obedience, submission, bullying, and shaming. We grow up fearing the consequences of disobedience through our caregivers' anger and ridicule. The fear shame die is 100 times magnified in children who have been abused physically, emotionally, or sexually. There is not only the terror of being harmed, but also the fear of shame. The energy of shame is a free stance. We subconsciously and consciously try to hide painful experiences from overwhelming us. We suppress and push it deep inside. We fear the shame of our flaws and perceived imperfections from being exposed. Not surprisingly, people who experience shame subconsciously shrink and feel small. Their heads are bowed and eyes are downcast. They are afraid to look directly at anyone. Fear makes us want to crouch and hide, and shame makes us shrink at the idea of being exposed. Psychologically, the fear shame stance is of constriction and contraction. Is it any surprise that the body follows this mental posture? Body brain researcher Bessel states that it takes tremendous energy to keep functioning while carrying the memory of terror and the shame of utter weakness and vulnerability. I try to cover up my shame filled self with a false bravado of being unaffected by anything. I stoically played the part of the good Christian who bears her cross until my body bore the brunt. Scoliosis. My fascia froze into self protection with no room for my spine to develop properly. Nonetheless, these internal emotional states cannot be just erased by thinking differently or putting on power postures and feeling empowered. Healing scoliosis or any other illness starts with your mind. The most important aspect of healing is feeling safe. Check out my video on safety and healing. Next, you need to let go of fear, shame, and other negative emotions that are holding you down literally. It means delving deep within and loosening the grip of the implicit memories held within the body. Even today, modern treatment for scoliosis focuses only on the physical aspect instead of healing the underlying emotional causes that bind the spine to its scoliotic posture. No amount of pulling, stretching, pushing, or surgery is going to reverse this unless one releases the suppressed memories held tight within our fascial tissue. Our tissues hold our issues. To overcome our fear shame based mindset, we need an enlightened witness, a therapist, a friend, a trusted family member. someone attuned to us who will empathically reflect goodness, kindness, care, love, and non judgment. I have been fortunate. My adult son has been there to support me, which has changed my shame based view of myself. Authentic, caring, interpersonal connections activate the primitive limbic mirror neuron system in our brain. Through the eyes of an enlightened witness, we experience limbic revision. Our amygdala downregulates our feelings of distress to facilitate feelings of safety within us. We no longer have to be defensive and closed up. We can let go of fear, shame, and other distressing feelings that diminish who we are. To heal from trauma, we have to see our goodness reflected in the compassionate gaze of another person's eyes, that we aren't a piece of garbage. Our souls need to viscerally feel the unjudgmental acceptance of us as a wonderful, unique person, unlike what we experience with our family. Whenever I feel down, I imagine Maya Angelou looking me in the eye and saying, stand up straight and realize who you are. You are a child of God. Stand up straight. Check out my blue pea flower print.